Well, hi guys. Welcome to Weekly Travel Updates. I am Melinda Fargus. I'm the proud owner of Action Travel. And in less than a month, we'll be celebrating 35 years serving Alamance County, several mission boards, and just the general public. I'm very proud of that. Thank you, Lord. Um, Wow, so much has happened. I'm sure that you've seen all the news this weekend, but we're going to talk about big storms, big sales, and what's coming up next. Um, this weekend, God, we've had 5 days of tornadoes ripping across our country. And I listened to the governor this morning, Governor Andy Beshear of Kentucky. He said that London and Somerset were hit the worst. There were 17 deaths in Kentucky, mainly in Laurel County, and there's still search and rescue going on right now. He said that out of 14 national destructions that he's been a part of since he's been governor, that he thinks this could be the very worst, specifically with the death tolls. But there were times that this EF2, and when it got to St. Louis, they think it was an EF3, reached wind speeds of 152 miles an hour. And it plowed a path of 26 miles of destruction. When it got into St. Louis, northern St. Louis, the tornado was 1 mile wide, and it left an 8-mile path across the northern part of St. Louis. There were over 5,000 buildings destroyed. And it's just absolutely devastating because there are at least 28 in Missouri that these storms have claimed their lives, from age 30 to age 82. And there's no rhyme nor reason. You look at some of these maps and some of the destruction, and here's a row of houses and the roofs are taken off. The other side of the street, they're completely flattened. I heard a story today of a son who drove all night for fear of the storms for his 94-year-old mom. And he got to her home and picked her up out of the recliner and carried her to his car minutes before a tree came through the house and would have killed her because it just went right across that recliner. I mean, you hear of stories that are fascinating, but we just really need to pray for these people. I can't imagine this much destruction from one storm. Of course, we saw Helene and what it did, but man, this is fresh in our eyes. On a higher note, the stocks all went up for the cruise lines this week. Carnival went up 11.7%. $23.39. Remember just a few weeks ago when I was saying the rates for Carnival were $15.50, and that I had not remembered the stock prices being that low. And I can remember Royal Caribbean was under 170, and Royal Caribbean just has climbed every opportunity. They were up 2%, up to $255.42 per share. Then Norwegian was still up just a little bit, 1%, and they're up to 19.27. You have to wonder why there's such a drastic difference in the other cruise lines and Norwegian's just creeping up. Well, they have a lot of mixed reviews, a lot. And we were looking to do Hawaii next year on Norwegian, and we're going to wait and see what these Hawaii taxes do before we make that decision. So anyway, I apologize. So the Mississippi Valley this week, before I go on, the Mississippi Valley tonight, they are still up for a series of storms. So before we go past all of the tornado news, just think about the people in the Mississippi Valley this evening. It's supposed to be on until 1 a.m. Well, a bit of cruise news. While on a 19-day cruise in Japan, Captain Bartolome, he's a 53-year-old captain who had been with Princess Cruise Line 29 years, and he passed away over the weekend. The story read that at 2 a.m. in the morning, a emergency medical alert came out across the ship. When you hear that, you would normally assume that would be for doctors or medical experience. And by morning, it had been announced that the captain passed away. That's just hard to hear. They're in a strange place and 19-day sailing, and somebody of this young age of 53 passes away. In kind of a comic relief story, there was a passenger in the Sydney harbor who was trying to board a Carnival cruise, and there are videos. There are people walking up and down the dock, and this guy starts climbing the mooring ropes. The ropes that they tie up to the dock. He was climbing between the upper mooring rope and the next one down and just shimmying just as well as you please. And security finally came up to him, and they lowered the mooring ropes right down into the dock where, they were waiting for him. And he was arrested because he had gotten through a series of authorized personnel only entries. You were supposed to only be in the area if you were a cruise passenger with cruise documentation or authorized personnel. So it's unsure how he got there, but it was in Sydney, and I'm sure that they got a big joke out of it that evening. Well, I watched a YouTube this week about the expansion of the MSC Cruise Line's private island. The reason I was watching it is, even though I've said it, guys, I'm considering doing an MSC ship, the new ship. There were hundreds of travel agents on board when it did its inaugural sailing just weeks ago, and I listened to about 20 of those reviews this week from agents. They were shocked and surprised. It was as pretty as other MSC ships, but much more practical. And the food was good all around. For the price point, we may try to do a group sailing on MSC. It won't take place of, my celebrity sailings because I love celebrity, but I do think I want to give them another chance. It has been years since I took a group from my church on an MSC ship. And at the time, we didn't feel like the cuisine was very good. It was really geared toward Europeans. We didn't enjoy the 5 languages of all of the announcements that still go on board, go on board to this day. But this ship is really gorgeous, and I'm going to see what kind of rates there are and see if it would benefit us. Well, May is just a month of sales. It's travel agent month. So lots of the different tour companies are offering tremendous discounts. It's mainly the tour group companies, like you fly over to Europe and you get on a Globus tour bus. There's two sets of groups that are fighting for your business. So Trafalgar has been in business decades and decades, as has Globus. And Trafalgar Tours offers a lesser expensive option. It's called Insight. And Insight also has a lower price point option, and it's called Cost Saver. So for the Trafalgar brand, you can get up to 20% off any 2025 departure for Trafalgar. You can get 19% off any Insight departures and 18% off of any Cost Saver trips. I just quoted a Cost Saver for somebody for an Ireland trip, and we were $14.16 a person for a week for the land portion of Ireland. That's a pretty good deal. And it gave lots and lots of options and a lot that you would be seeing within that week. So if you've ever thought about it, just shoot me an email, tell me what you're thinking, and I will tell you what tour brand might have options for your destination. Then I have to tell you about the Navy ship. I mean, I'm sure that you've seen it by now, but in New York this weekend, there was a Mexican Navy ship, and it was parked down at the South Seaport, where you catch the tours over to Ellis Island. And they're unreally sure what happened, but the ship went out, and before it goes out, their ships look like old maritime ships with mast up. The masts are made out of metal, but the crossbars are made out of wood. And before the ship can depart, the Navy crawls up and they dress out the ship. That's what it's called. They buckle themselves in. So I guess I'm going to have to show you on my phone. I couldn't find a great picture. There are, okay, these are people. These are people standing up. That's a person. This is a person. And when it hit, it knocked everything from here down. And those people tumbled, 2 of them to their death. Dozens are injured. But there's a lot of speculation over it because in the last seconds before it made contact, it sped up, and it sped up in the wrong direction, like towards the bridge. You can see a wake in the water. And so they said, not sure what happened, but it had turned on its engines and was powered up, and it struck and just broke off the tops. I'm sure there'll be more news, but right now they're having to stay in New York. And I think that this was in for an exercise, for the Mexican Navy, but I don't think that they were planning on staying there, and they're going to have to stay there through the investigation. So one account that I listened to this afternoon said that they could be there for weeks. So just something to keep your eye out for. Well, guys, thank you so much for hanging with me tonight. The last thing that I want to share with you is that prices went down for our January departure. If you are interested in doing an Eastern Caribbean, Antigua, St. Kitts, San Juan, and Puerto Plata, that's our destination on our 8-night sailing, and we're going to take off on the 2nd of January. We're going to sail on the 3rd of January and come home on the 11th. So if you have interest, reach out to me. I'm Melinda Fargas. Again, I'm the proud owner, CFO of Action Travel and Professional Development Journeys. And you can reach out to me at my initials. Let's see, it's MCF4Action at gmail.com. There you go. I have had just an influx of requests this week, and I feel blessed. Thank you, Lord. Lots of people are coming and going. We helped a lady take off to a conference in Israel very last minute. So pray for Miss Sharon. The Lord knows who she is. She took off today by herself. So pray over this lady who's trying to do what she thinks is what the Lord wants her to do. Well, I'm Melinda Fargas, and again, thanks for hanging out with me. If you have a tip for a story, or you know something that's exciting that happened this past week in the travel industry, please reach out to me. I would love to hear about it and take it into the rest of our traveling community. Thanks again, guys, and I sure do appreciate you hanging out with me. Until next week, have a great weekend. And remember, without a travel agent, you are on your own.